There was a quote I heard a while ago that was, if you do a lot more than what you're getting paid for, eventually you'll get paid a lot more than what you do.
Yeah. People always talk about wage gaps, but they don't often talk about effort gaps and risk gaps.
What is success to you?
I think it was a learn to love it experience.
And there's always pitfalls that you can fall in, but then you've got no one else to blame but yourself.
Number one thing if you're struggling is to catch other people about it.
Hey guys, before we kick off, I just wanted to take a quick second to say thanks to our content partners, Abodo. You probably know Abodo from their featured timbers like cladding, decking, screening, and all those beautiful timbers that make our projects look amazing. Now, on top of all that, Abodo timber is actually grown and manufactured right here in New Zealand, and it's actually verified carbon negative. Now, what the heck is carbon negative? I'm going to be honest with you, I had to Google that. Carbon negative means Abodo actually takes more carbon out of the air than it puts in. That's got to be good, right? For the environment at least. Cheers, Abodo. You guys are actually legends. Now, let's kick off this episode. Wilson.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming. Wilson or Mike, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Yeah. No, you're welcome. Good to be here.
Yeah, no, thanks for making the drive all the way up. How long was the drive? Like an hour and a half?
Oh, just shy of 2 hours.
Right.
Yeah. Didn't get caught in the traffic, so we were good.
Yeah, good on you, mate. No, I wanted to get you on because, like I mentioned, like a while ago, 6 months, a year ago, I can't remember how long ago, I saw your face on like a magazine.
Yeah, Property Investor magazine.
That's it.
Yep.
And I remember flipping through it, and it was all about you and your wife, and I think you had your kids in there, and you were just sort of talking about how you're, buying investment properties and going nuts.
Yep.
Essentially.
Yeah, essentially.
And then I put it down, and I never thought about you again until you popped up on Instagram somewhere, and you were making some pretty cool educational kind of type videos around how to invest in property and how people can get in.
Yep.
And be creative around doing that.
Yep.
And so and then you're a construction business owner.
Yeah. Yep. I own a building company in Te Awamutu, so I've had that for 8 years now, which has been an interesting ride. Lots of ups and downs, lots of challenges. Lots of market changes.
For sure, man. So tell me a little bit. Where did you grow up? Did you grow up in Te Awamutu?
No, I grew up in Matamata, so not too far from TA.
Yeah.
But my wife is from Te Awamutu. So I ended up getting my building apprenticeship in Te Awamutu, working for a guy named Zane. And then naturally, we brought a couple of rentals, and then we brought a house in TA and moved there because driving an hour and a half a day is pretty painful.
Yeah.
After you do it for 2 years.
I want to, because you're saying you bought a couple of properties like it's nothing, right? Like you're buying some candy bars.
Yep.
Tell me a little bit of that. Okay, so how did you grow up? Was your family into property or what's?
Nah, not my direct family. I had an auntie and uncle that were a little bit into property. My mum and dad were dairy farmers. So I grew up in a dairy farm, did lots of work, feed the calves, milk the cows before and after school. Even when I was, say, 6 years old, my mum, because they'd both go out and milk the cows and work on the farm, they'd come in the room at, say, 5 a.m, flick the lights on, say, make yourself a Milo, and I'll see you in the shed. Like, I even remember this vividly. I'd get up and I'd have a Milo, and the shed's like 200 meters away from the house, and it's pitch black. And when you're like 5 years old and you got to walk through the pitch black to the shed, you're a bit scared, pretty freaked out.
Wow, make your own Milo. They didn't even make it for you?
Oh, maybe they did.
Yeah.
I remember being scared walking to the shed. But
that's amazing from a very young age. Okay, so you were very used, because I grew up on a farm, but it was in South Africa.
Yep.
And we had people working for us, so we wouldn't do, we sort of just, project manage more so than do the work. Where in New Zealand, you have to do it all yourself.
Yep.
So
it's too expensive to pay too many people.
Exactly, right?
Yeah. Especially at the moment, farmers are struggling.
Yeah, man, 100%. So do your parents still own a farm? Do they still?
Yep. Yeah, still the same farm. They've been there for 47 years.
Right.
Roughly, yeah.
Crazy. So you didn't want to get into farming?
No. Not for me.
From 5-year-old, you're like, nah, that shed's too far away in the dark?
Nah, I think I just managed to go out and experience other things and realised, farming, some people really love farming, but it's a lifestyle. You're very constrained to that farm for months at a time, and somebody, the cows have to get milked twice a day for months and months. Especially if you own the farm and you've got staff, and if they're sick, you've still got to be there. Like, somebody has to be there as the backup.
100%.
So
Yeah.
I very much like freedom, having options, the lifestyle. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely the opposite of freedom in that sense, right?
Mm.
And then also you're so at the mercy of like the weather.
Oh,
and,
yeah, the weather. Yep. Government legislation. Every 3 to 6 years, you get a government that hates you.
Yeah.
It
They
is
just
what it
left,
is.
right? Didn't they just leave?
Yeah.
Okay, so you didn't want to get into that. So tell me then a little bit about your upbringing. So you had an uncle that was into property. And
Correct.
So
Yep.
how did you, at what age did you start to figure out like, hey, I want to get into do some property?
About when I was just after I turned 20 years old, and it was essentially through putting some serious thought into and having some serious conversations with my mum and dad at the time, who probably were realizing that I wasn't going to be a farmer. Luckily, my older brother's on the farm, so
Okay,
they
so
got
that's
one
okay.
son on the farm.
So you did not so much pressure on you then.
There's that side of it too. So they basically said to me, because they knew that I say had a little bit of an entrepreneurial spirit, I wanted to do well, and they said, well, which one of your friends is doing well in life, and what do they do? And so I could think of this one guy, his name's Tim, he owns an accounting firm now, but he's a few years older than me, he's one of my brother's friends, and he owned 3 houses, and I was like, the only guy I can think of is this guy Tim, and he owns 3 rental properties, and so he would have been mid-20s, and I was like, maybe I should get into rental properties, and they're like, sweet, they're like, this is good, if you're going to buy rental properties, what job are you going to get so that you can actually go and buy rental properties? So obviously building is a great skill to have if you want to buy properties, add value, revalue them or on-sell them. So essentially it just led me into looking for a building apprenticeship at that stage. And after a little while, I found a building apprenticeship in TA for a guy named Zane, which was it was essentially a double whammy because he was a builder with a building company, but he was doing a whole bunch of developments and flips and rental properties. So he was kind of already doing the thing that I wanted to do. So I was able to validate what I wanted to do by seeing him do it and also learn just through watching him, which is really cool.
Right. So do you have any interest in the building side as well? Do you have a little bit of passion for the building side on top of it?
Yep, absolutely, yeah. Oh, yeah, it's pretty cool building. Like it's just it's pretty rough sometimes. It's get pretty stressful situations, but it's cool. It's kind of like when you go to work on the site, you're working with a bunch of your mates as well. Like everyone's having a bit of a banter. I mean, there's days when people are pissed off and it's raining and you're muddy and whatever. But yeah, no, I definitely like the building side as well.
Yeah, it's definitely like a cooler vibe on a building site than being in an office, eh? Like it's a lot more vibe going on.
Yep, yeah, there's definitely a lot of office days where I sit behind my computer and I look out the window and it's sunny and I'm like, I'm going to go for a drive to site, just like get out in the sun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just to go yarn with the boys and...
Yeah, a little bit sometimes. I mean, there's also a little bit of the project management involved where I want to go and check where things are at and figure out what I need to do next. And
yeah, okay. So who was Wilson like in high school? Like, who were you when you were a young kid? Like, what was
great
your vibe?
question.
Because you seem to me like very entrepreneurial. You seem to me like you're kind of like potentially like scatterbrained, like looking for just looking for things, shiny objects, opportunities, or whatever, right?
ADHD potentially a little bit.
Yeah, ADHD, but I don't think that's even a disorder. I think it's just a different way of life, right?
Yep.
But or different way of how your brain's structured, maybe. But who were you in high school? How would your friends have described you?
Don't know. Who was I in high school? That's an interesting question. Don't know, but when we I suppose in high school I did do a few entrepreneurial things. I used to build a bunch of furniture when I was at high school, so I was really good at woodwork and I'd sell that furniture on Trade Me. So there was also that aspect. I already wasn't really experienced, but I was already kind of interested in, say, building and working with your hands before I got a building apprenticeship. It definitely had a bit of an entrepreneurial spirit, if you call it that. So, do you know the YES scheme, the Young Enterprise scheme?
I think I've heard about it. I don't know. What is it about?
It's basically like a program or a class in 6th or 7th form where you have to create a product or a business, or you get a product and you have to try and sell it.
Right.
So what we did is, this is when I was 15, 16 years old. So, battery packs that you charge your phone. We were one of the first people to bring them into the country. And so we got we called it, I think it was Energize or something. I can't remember the name. But so we brought in these little like AA battery packs that you could plug into like the old Nokias and Alcatel, whatever they're called. Yeah, so that was, yeah. So we did that. So yeah, I guess there was that. I remember one time when I was about 13 and this is actually a crazy concept I was thinking about on the way up here. We're in the class and the teacher, we're about 13, she was like, out of this class of 30, only one of you will ever be a millionaire, which is crazy now because $1 million is not even that much anymore. It's just a mortgage-free house.
Yeah.
And so she was like to the whole class, who in this class do you think is going to be the millionaire out of this class? And Johnny Tuisavuna gets up from the back of the room and he's like, Michael Wilson.
And so that stuck?
Yeah, well, it stuck in my head.
That's amazing, how something like that can just sort of stick and you go, okay, yeah, maybe it will be Michael Wilson.
Yeah, I didn't think so at the time. But.
Yeah. It's okay. So you obviously left school. You got an apprenticeship. Your parents gave you the green light, and the apprenticeship happened to be with a guy that also does some property stuff on the side.
Yep.
And what was that like? Sort of being an apprentice, walking on site with all these builders and stuff. Were you pretty comfortable doing that straight away, or was it a bit nerve-wracking?
No, it was definitely nerve-wracking. Yep. And there was couple of pretty hard guys on the team when I started. Yeah. There's this guy named Scott, and it's funny because when I first started, I was like, this guy's an asshole. And now I think back at it and I'm like, I was so lucky that I had a guy like that who was, essentially turning you from this useless adolescent kid into somebody who's able to deal with hard problems and handle stress and handle someone being hard on you. So, it's kind of the way that you're the one who determines how things mean or what you make of them.
Yeah.
So
it's funny. It is kind of funny, because you would have just hated that guy, for a long time, and now you're kind of probably fond of him. It's kind of
a little bit.
Thing.
Yeah, I'd love to go see him again, have a beer with him, and
I definitely have those sort of guys that I can look back to now as well. That was kind of similar, but you kind of need that, just kind of. Because you want to move on from being a little boy to becoming a man, right? So
it's quite lucky with Zane's size of his company and the crew, because there was a wide range. I think there was about 9 or 10 builders at the time, so it was quite good because there were guys like Scott, who was hard on you. There was Donald, who was just balls to the wall all the time. You'd learn a lot, and you could never. He was always thinking 3 or 4 steps of you. So you don't even try to think for yourself of him, because he knows. Just listen to him and do it fast. And then there was guys in the middle who were halfway through their apprenticeship, and then me starting. So there was a wide range of people. You could see the whole process of people going through their apprenticeship, being a project manager. Which was cool.
And so. We talked a little bit before off air, and you were mentioning it was kind of an interesting, a different way of how you started your building business and why you started it.
Yep.
Talk to me a little bit through that.
Yeah, so I kind of started my building company by default, because while I was an apprentice, I was about 2.5 years into it, and I got into building because I wanted to buy rental properties, and then I started seeing my boss and other guys doing spec homes and making $50,000, $60,000, $100,000 on a spec. And so I was like, sweet, I want to do a spec home. So me and my brother got together. I sold the rentals. We put our money together, set up a company, brought a section. And the only way to get finance, unless we had 50% deposit and paid a quantity surveyor that the bank approved, was to have so to get finance on 20%, which is what we needed, we had to have a building company do a fixed price building contract to us or to our company. So I just formed a second company, called it Wilson Designer Homes, wrote a fixed price building contract, and then signed it as the seller, so the building company, and signed it as the buyer getting the house built for. And that ticked all the bank's boxes, which is interesting. I don't know how they let that through, to be honest, but I think with the banks, a lot of the time it is ticking the boxes. So now they see that there's a building company that has its own insurances that's, essentially, because anyone can set up a building company. I mean, you've got to be an LBP to be able to sign off the house, but you can set up the building company, put everything in place. And as soon as that was done, the bank was happy with it. So then we went on and built our first spec home, which I built pretty much all around work hours. So I'd get up at 4 a.m, go to site for 2.5 hours before I'd get to work at 7, and then I'd work, and I'd always try to finish as early as I could, whether it was 3:30, 4 o'clock, go and work on the house till 7:30 at night, And I was
Wow.
doing this for like 3 months. I just remember I'd come home, I'd like eat dinner, and I'd lay on my pillow, like straight on my back, and I'd just be like, bam, fall asleep. And I wake up in the morning in the exact same position because your body's just so tired.
It's gone, eh?
Yeah, so we did that, and I ended up leaving my building job about a month or two before we finished it, and we sold that, and that went incredibly well. I think we caught the start of the market starting to move. I think this was 2015.
Right.
So,
Yes.
Yeah, so that went. We haven't done many specs that have done nearly as well as that one.
And how many of you guys were involved?
Just me and my brother.
And what did you guys make on that one?
It's about 143,000 before tax after GST.
Wow. So that's pretty significant, right?
It
Was that
is.
a big chunk of change for you
It
back
is
then?
when you're 24, 25 years old. It's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you're going, and then I built that. So I built this first spec home, and it's a pretty incredible feeling. And then I was like, how can I do 10 of these? Like, how can I make $1 million? Not that future spec homes actually make that much money. So that just went really, really well, that one.
So then just in terms of the timeline, so then you quit your job. So you were not qualified. You were qualified then?
Yeah, I got qualified just 2.5 years into my apprenticeship, got qualified.
Cool.
And a friend was going to use his LBP and oversee the job, and then I ended up getting my LBP before it finished, and then updated it on the record of work. So.
And how long did it take you to build that house in the end, from start to finish?
I started building the frames at home over the Christmas break to save money while it was in council. We started, I think, end of January with a pad, and I think it sold in May. So it's at February, March, April, May, 4 months.
Wow, it's pretty quick. So, okay, so then why... I assume you then went on and obviously started officially started your construction business and started building homes and for renovations for other people, right?
Yep. Yeah, what I sort of did is I listed the house because I left my building job, so we listed it for sale, and people would come and look at the house because we weren't using an agent, we were selling it privately, and they'd come and look because they wanted to buy a new build. But for some people, it wasn't for them, so I'd just say, oh, look, what are you looking for? Like, what sort of budget are you working with? What type of house do you want? And then I'd take all the details, get their number, and I'd go home and I'd look at sections around the place and I'd sketch up hand-drawn house plans. And then because I just finishing off the back of building this house, I had all the costs, so I was able to back cost the house and then base it on what this next house would cost to build. And then I'd just call them and be like, oh, hey, what about this section? And here's email them through a hand-drawn floor plan and be like, here's a floor plan and you could build it for this much. And so that led us to getting our first 2 client builds.
Wow.
So that was how we went from the spec into client builds, and that spec sold. Me and my brother went to do another one, and like I was saying before, how could I do 10? I just wrote down on a piece of paper every single person I knew that had money or might have been able to finance to build a spec home, and I just started calling them all and going, hey, you interested in doing a spec home? I've just done this one. And that's where I ended up getting into business with my uncle, who he used to be a builder and he'd done lots of developments, and he must have been I don't know if he entirely did it because he's like, oh yeah, sweet, I'll make some money. There's probably a small aspect of, oh, well, he's proven that it works and I'm going to do this just to help him a little bit as well.
Yeah, probably a bit of each.
Yeah. Yep.
That's pretty cool. Okay, so then you almost like got into your spec home business before you even really did your building business.
Yeah, well, the first spec then turned into 2 specs because I did one more with my brother, one with my uncle, and that first spec turned into 2 client builds. I still remember them pretty vividly, the first 2 client builds. And then, that sort of turned into more. And then me and my brother did a spec, which turned into, we just keep using that same principle. People that come to look at the specs, find out what they're looking for, go and find a section, even call the agents and try to negotiate the section down on their behalf. So you provide value up front and then you give it on to the next person, and they see a lot of value in that and go, he's going over and above for me, so they want to help you out as well.
Yeah. So those speckies almost like worked as a bit of a show home then, right? And that,
Correct. Yep. Absolutely.
So it just shows you the benefit of having a show home or equivalent.
Yeah. Yep.
For people to be able to see what they're going to, buy, or, essentially, or sign the building contract on. Okay, so that's good. That's quite a good way of doing it. And then, so then what? You started hiring people to come work for you, and how fast did that sort of grow?
Yeah, or as soon as I left my job, we also started doing some square metre rate work for a couple of builders. So I hired an apprentice. Straight off the gun, he had no experience, probably wasn't the smartest move, but he actually stuck with me and turned out to be a great guy. And now he's a qualified builder, still building. But like in hindsight, I probably should have just hired someone who had a bit of experience straight away instead of myself being green at business and also getting someone green and having to teach them at the same time.
Yeah. And why do you think you did that?
Just rushing.
Right. You were just desperate to get someone. And
Yeah. He was just the first person that showed up at the door and was like, "Hey, I want to get a building apprenticeship." It's like, sweet.
Okay, so you flipped your first one. You probably made like 60, 70 grand yourself if you split it 50-50.
Yep.
And then you straight away get a couple of building projects, and I think you said you flipped another one.
Yep.
So you got yourself a nice Ford Ranger then? How did that work?
Nah, I had a 2011 Triton, so it was like 5-year-old Triton.
Right.
Yeah.
You didn't think of, I'm going to chuck a few utes on, get the sign writing up, and
I got the sign writing done maybe a couple of months after that.
right.
Yeah.
But you didn't start over investing like a lot of people do. They go, here's a bit of success.
Yeah.
Look, it's going to go well.
No, I brought my first new ute in 2019, so that was say 3.5 years after starting the building company.
Right. So were you very focused on keeping overheads low, and I guess your goal was to invest, be an investor. So you weren't thinking about shiny things straight away.
Yeah, we sort of kept pivoting because I got into building because I wanted to be a builder so I could buy rentals and do them up. And then I pivoted into building spec homes. And then we built maybe 10, 11 spec homes over the next few years. And I thought about it and I was like, if I had just kept my first 3 rentals and done nothing, I would have had a similar net worth to have going balls to the walls for the next 3 years, building all these houses to sell them. Because, you're paying tax along the way. The market was going up in values. There was that aspect to it. And then I was like, I need to get back into buying rentals again and go down the investing path. So we sort of pivoted a bit there and moved back into investment properties again while still doing the specs and client builds.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's talk a little bit. I want to talk a bit more about the investment side, but before I want to touch on the construction business as well, because you own a legitimate construction business. Mm-hmm. So tell me a little bit about that. Like, how many guys have you got working for you? What's the structure like of your construction business?
Currently, there's 6 guys. So there's 6 builders, and there's Jade, my wife, and Justine in the office, and myself. So we've basically got Matt. He's the project manager. So he does a lot of the on-site management, deals with the subbies, organises them, and we sort of work in together. Like we're not at sort of the next size where everyone has their specific role and that's all they do. There's still quite a bit of crossover.
Yep.
So like even though Matt's say the project manager, there's still quite a bit of crossover with project management to me. But it's also because we're a little bit unique in the fact that we're not just a building company that does client builds. We're also doing, we do specs and flips and subdivisions, and we've got the investment side that we're all working on. Plus at the moment we're doing a lot of smaller jobs just because where the market's at. So because of that, there is a lot of crossover between everyone's roles and what they actually do.
And so how many jobs would you have going at any point in time at the moment?
Oh, at the moment depends what your class as a project, but like we're doing bathroom renos and we're rebuilding a garage that burnt down, and we just started a spec home down in Otrahonga. We're doing subdivision work on a 1-8 subdivision at the moment. We've just finished a big new client build. We're just finishing a big renovation for a client, which has been an interesting project, that one. And
so you guys got a lot going on in different size ranges. And that's where the market's at the moment.
That's where the market's at.
And you're going to have to, it's very few builders that are just working on shiny new builds, right? You got to just sort of go where the market is. And as a big part of that for you, just keep your guys busy, keep it rolling so you don't sort of lose guys.
Yep, that's a huge part of it, yeah. I probably look like a little bit scared too. I'm not scared, but I don't want to just accept it might be in my own head, accept failure and decrease the size and be like, nah, it didn't work out. I'm like, nah, I'm going to battle through this and just keep going.
Yeah. And I guess if once the opportunity, you're also looking, because you're probably like a glass half full kind of guy, right? So you see if opportunity opens up, now you let go of 3 guys, now you have to get them back anyway, and like it sort of
and we know that we have 30, 40 houses in the pipeline to be built. It's just so many of them are either on hold because of finance. The client can't get the finance. They're, say, spec homes where we can't get the finance. So we don't really want to lose the team. You could get it back, but it's just nice when everyone gets on and they work well together and they know who each other are. And
yeah. It's probably beneficial to have both, right? You got your property investment / development side, and then you have your construction business, because obviously they feed one another. But the construction business is also good sometimes because for a bit of cash flow, right? So you're not forced to develop.
Yep, correct. Yeah, well, there is really no cash flow when you're developing, I suppose, unless you're getting progressive drawdowns from the bank like a client would pay. But yeah, the cash flow is one thing, as long as your clients pay you. The cash flow is definitely helpful from the client side of things. But for me personally, I would like to pivot, or we're in the process of pivoting towards not really doing client builds. And there's a number of reasons for that. But it's being in the position and having the ability to be able to fund and make all of the projects happen without that cash flow. And there's a few aspects to that. One, if you don't have the servicing from the cash flow of the clients, it's hard to get the bank finance because the bank doesn't consider the development income as income to be used for serviceability when you're doing your lending, because it's speculative, even though most of your income might come from that side.
Right.
But yeah, I think going forward, we've had some really amazing clients, and we've done heaps of client builds. We've also had a couple of really terrible clients, and I'm not afraid to say that either. It is what it is. Truth hurts. Truth doesn't care about your feelings. So what we want to do is we want to go more towards the in-house projects, because they are, say, 20% of my stress, but they're probably 80% of the profit. So the old 80-20 rule.
Yep.
So
we were talking about before around the construction side, and obviously on this, on the podcast, we try to talk about the good, bad, and the ugly, and all of it, right? And so I remember when I had one of my first guests on, it might even been Ed Cooney or someone who said to me he said, "Hey, listen, mate, you just have to understand that the risk far outweighs the reward, and as long as you're able to understand that and accept that, then you can still do it. Yep. But you have to understand that is the case.
That is the case for, if you talk to accountants, 8 or 9 out of 10 builders are better to close their companies down and go get a job for someone. So like they're taking all this extra time, they've got to run their business, they're getting all this stress, huge liability, but they're making less than they would just going and working for somebody. And you only have to talk to a bunch of accountants to realise that. That's not to say that some building companies make incredible money, because some do, but it's hard yards to get to that point, I believe.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, that's also why I wanted to get you on, really, is because, same way I got, Bex on a few, 10 episodes ago. She went into project management. You're doing a lot of the, property investment side or development or building spec homes or flipping or whatever. And there are people that go into other aspects just to kind of provide people with options, if you're not able to make, ends meet or make as much as you need to make through your building business, or you don't even want to go and start your own building business, there are other avenues to kind of generate good income.
Yep.
As being a builder, being your foundation.
Yep. And the other side to that is everyone has different circumstances. So you might start a building company and you might, for example, work in with a developer and they give you all your work and you just work hourly for them and get charged up. And maybe you make reasonably good money, and that can be a nice, easy way where you get paid, you show up, there's always work there sort of thing. So that should be a circumstantial position that you might be in. Otherwise, you could be someone who wants to go down the route of, say, finding clients, doing all the marketing, advertising, branding, doing fixed price building contracts. Maybe you don't have the backing at the time to go able to go do your own projects, so you go and do the client work for people and you do the hard yards and build a business that way.
Yeah, so there's definitely options, and you can learn as well. If you're working for a developer, even though you're just getting paid, you can be more curious and ask questions and learn.
Exactly. Yep. And most people are actually keen. Most people who have done well themselves, they want to help people who are trying to do well. It's like my old man used to always say to me, a hand up, not a handout. Yep. So people who are doing well will generally, people who do well are already the kind of people that like to have other people around them that are doing well. So if they see someone who's motivated, ambitious, and young trying to do well, most of the time they want to help that person.
Yeah.
Whether it's just sharing knowledge or whether it's some sort of financial backing to help them in the process.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. Okay, so let's talk about your business. It's called Wilson Designer Homes. You started it originally for the purposes of doing your investments. It's turned into its own. It's taken a life of its own, so to speak.
Yep.
So where you guys are placed now, how are you sort of unique in the market? What's your unique value proposition, to use a big phrase?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I guess our unique value proposition is that we're very dynamic and we can sort of do, especially in today's climate, which is very advantageous, is we can do anything. We're doing fences, bathroom renos, to whole house renovations, to still doing fixed price building contracts. And we're even going and doing, say, jibbing houses for plasterers or larger building companies. We're doing a little bit of everything, which in a market like we are in the moment, that's probably one of the things that's meant that we can keep going. We haven't had to lay people off.
So you're kind of generalists almost.
Generalists, yeah. Yep. So we do everything in say, a lot of builders, they will sub out their jib, and even group housing companies will sub out their internal doors and finishing lines. Most of them will sub out their floors. We do all of that. Even they'll sub out their fences and their decks. Like we'll do essentially everything. Everything that we can do, we do.
And when clients come to you, you guys do fixed price contracts. You don't do there's no like cost plus or anything. You can do the fixed price contract for them because you understand both.
Yeah, we've done a lot of both. Yep.
Right. And which ones do you guys prefer?
I prefer doing cost plus or charge up now in terms of working for clients as opposed to fixed price builds. We'll still do the fixed price builds, but it's great for that cash flow, consistent cash flow. You just know there's the margin built in, and you're not going to get stuck with the fact that the costs blow out in the process in the middle, or if the time delays happen and then the costs are going up in the process, like we've all experienced in the last few years, you're not going to get left holding the bag at the end of the day.
Yep.
So I definitely prefer the cost plus or charge up work as opposed to the fixed price builds.
Yeah. A lot of builders have been, you almost a bit gun shy after all the material increases.
Yeah, so many people have been burnt in the last few years.
Yeah.
Yep. And a lot of it's out of their control. It's the market itself.
Yeah. It definitely seems to be a good option at the moment. Obviously, even though builders do have their different opinions on that. So how do you guys get work at the moment? So obviously you're doing a lot of different stuff. Like, do you guys do a lot of marketing?
Yeah, we do a little bit of marketing. We still, a lot of it's word of mouth, and we still get some through our existing listings. And to be honest, at the moment, most of it is now in-house. So it's like the market's really slowed down. But another one of the reasons we've been able to keep powering on is we've still managed to keep doing the in-house projects. We've just completed a flip, and we're now starting a spec home down in Otrahonga. We're doing our own subdivision work at the moment. So like if we didn't have the in-house work, the business would probably be done. There'd be no point having it open anymore.
Right. So yeah, you guys luckily you have that option. So with the subdivision work, is that, you mean you guys are doing your own subdivision?
Yep.
Right.
So we project manage it ourselves. We've been building retaining walls at the moment. The boys are building fences. We're even helping, because the drain layers are really busy, so we're helping them like put all their stormwater crates together yesterday for most of the day.
And so how many sites in the subdivision?
On that subdivision, that one is 1 into 8, so it's a 4,000 square lot with an existing house, and there'll be, say, average 450 square sections.
And you'll sell the sections, or you'll build on top?
We'll build on them. Yep.
Right.
Yep. It's pretty hard to sell sections in the current market.
Okay, so in terms of your business, so what kind of marketing do you, because builders are always wondering, like, what sort of marketing should I be focused on? Is there any marketing out there that you've done that, even if it's offline or whatever, like that gives you some sort of return?
Yeah, we have We've done all sorts of marketing. We've done SEO and Google Ads. We haven't done too much in terms of Instagram for the building company itself up until maybe recently, but we used to do quite a lot on Facebook. And you get drips and drabs from that. I think the best thing about the advertising on, say, social media platforms is I don't feel like it brings in the work, but it puts you front of face and people know who you are. So when it comes up in someone's conversation about builders, they'll go, oh yeah, I've seen this guy before. So there's that word of mouth aspect that then brings the jobs in. There's also the word of mouth aspect, which we get quite a lot of from previous clients that we've built with, will recommend us to other people. We've had quite a few repeat jobs for clients too, built for the same client multiple times before.
And do you guys have architects that you work with, that you build with, build for regularly, or
not in terms of architects that have clients come to them and they send the jobs to us, but we have a draftsman that we effectively use for everything. Yep.
Cool. And so in terms of your building business, before we sort of move on to the investment side, because I think the investment part is really valuable for, for builders listening in as well, because, you don't start thinking about investment or development today and do it tomorrow, right? It's like a year, 2 year, 3 year process sometimes to kind of get yourself organized. But it's good for people to start thinking about that as the market starts turning eventually as well. So it's really important for us to talk about that as well. But just before we get to that, so in terms of your construction business, what are sort of the numbers that you look at that are really important to you to kind of make sure that things are ticking along?
The numbers in terms of, say, our overheads or margin on jobs, you mean? Or?
Yeah, so like exactly that.
Yep.
What are the numbers that you look at, 2 or 3 kind of numbers that gives you a guideline of things I like tracking?
Yeah, I when I look at a project, I quite often, I look a lot more high level than I do at looking at all the individual expenses. Like you still look at the individual expenses, but, if we're building a spec home, I want to do the overall and go, yep, sweet, it's 15% margin. Like, that's good. You know that something's going to blow out, but you want to make sure you've got the margin in there. And there's always going to be those couple of extra costs along the way. So that's kind of how we look at, say a spec or a flip, an overall project. But we have been spending a bit of time really looking at our overheads lately. That's just basically due to where the market's at. It's been in a contractionary period. So at the moment we're looking at our overheads and what we can actually cut out, what we don't need anymore, subscriptions, that sort of thing. We even just changed fuel cards to one that had a better deal recently. Potentially we're going to look at swapping yards come early next year at the end of the lease, because we're not the same size company we were, say, 2 years ago, so we don't really need what we have at the moment. And if we're pivoting towards, say, less client builds or no client builds, like we've got a full meeting room with all the samples and everything everywhere, but that's probably not really going to be as necessary moving forward. So that'd be one way of bringing down the costs.
Yeah, so you start counting the pennies a bit more.
Yeah, a little bit more, yeah.
Yeah, so the dollars can look after themselves. Yeah, and I think a lot of people are looking at that as now, like keeping their overheads low. What vehicles do they have?
Yep, we're thinking about getting rid of a vehicle because we got 6 guys and 5 vehicles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And is it necessary to have so many vehicles? And sometimes the guy's working on one project and he's just driving his ute there and home.
Yep, and they're all local at the moment too. So, we used to do quite a few projects in Matamata, which was 45 minutes drive. So you kind of needed to have a few vehicles. But
yeah. What are some of the biggest? I mean, you're still young. How old are you? 32?
Yep, 32.
Yeah, so you're a young guy, right? Up until this point, what's some sort of the biggest business lessons that you've kind of learned along the way? There's people that probably thinking of starting their own business, or maybe they 1, 2 years, 3 years in. What are some lessons that you've learned that if you could sort of redo some aspects of the business, you'd redo?
I would get a lot better at knowing your numbers. That's been a huge thing in the last few years with just the cost increases. Like when I first started, we based our first 2 client builds on a 10% margin, which they actually worked out okay, but that was because we didn't really have overheads. Like the office was run out of home. I had my 1 ute. We didn't have admin staff. We didn't have project management softwares, all that sort of thing. So 10% was fine, but as you grow a little bit, 10% not enough. Like if we're doing 10% now, we're breaking even. We're not making money. So you've got to really know the numbers, back cost, and then know what your cost of running your businesses above the cost of production. So knowing the numbers is one of the biggest lessons, because if you don't know your numbers, you're out of business, essentially.
Yeah. And what people a lot of times ask as well is then how do you associate your overhead costs to the projects? Like how do you split them up?
Yep. That's a challenging one. I sort of know that I've sort of figured out the size of the company is at the moment, the current structure. We need about 7.5% on everything we do. As long as we're full-time busy throughout the year, our overheads are about 7.5% of our total revenue. So that's sort of the base point. That's why I said if we're charging 10%, we're not making money, because 7.5% might be overheads, but what about 2.5% for the odd thing that goes wrong or a cost increase? So that's sort of how we work the overheads into what we charge.
Well, that's good. And I think that's reasonable overheads as well, right? I think people say you can do up to 10% or depending, for a small residential construction business. So I guess it depends on how big the business is. But that seems to be reasonable.
Yeah.
And so what advice then would you give to younger builders coming through around risk management? Obviously knowing your numbers. Is there anything else in terms of cash flow or contracts or anything like that?
Yep. All of the above. Just get ready to work super hard, and that things are going to go wrong and you're going to end up in stressful situations, which is actually good because it builds you as a person. So, the more pain that you go through, the stronger and better and smarter you're going to be on the other end. Yeah. Yeah. Get used to providing value for people up front. Get used to providing value for people. Sometimes you'll provide value, nothing ever happens, and you feel like you've wasted some time. But from my personal experience, it comes back a lot more than the value you provide. If you provide it up front, then people will trust you and they'll want to work with you. So
no, that's so true. I heard that there was a quote I heard a while ago that was, and sometimes I have to remind my wife about it as well, because she's like, "You were spending so much time on this," but it's like the quote goes, if you do a lot more than what you're getting paid for, eventually you'll get paid a lot more than what you do.
Yeah. People always talk about wage gaps, but they don't often talk about effort gaps and risk gaps.
100%. And then there's another quote as well that's very similar to that said, there's profit in all labour, which is kind of saying the same thing, right? There's profit in all labour.
Yep.
Eventually you'll realise the profit in your effort.
Yep. Well, the profit might not be the monetary value that you receive, but the profit might be the knowledge that you receive that makes you a lot more money in the future.
100%, yeah. So your sort of approach and mentality has been very much like adding value up front, and that's kind of how you started your company, right? In terms of looking for those sites and finding for looking for ways to add value to clients beyond just swinging a hammer.
Yep. Yeah. Well, that's sort of one way with clients, and another way with investors or other people to help you finance your in-house projects is packaging the deals, putting them together, showing them the numbers, and then going and giving it to them. And even say if you want to do a flip, for example, you go and get that property under contract, control the situation, package everything together, and then go and present it to somebody. So you've done the groundwork, put it together, you've proved the value, proved the concept, and people who are in a position to help you love that because, they're not going to go and do it.
Yeah, I love that. So and we've talked a little bit about the $140,000 you've made on one spec flip. Let's talk about the other side. What have you? And you haven't been in business necessarily 30, 40 years, but in terms of the decade or so that you've been doing this, what's the biggest financial hit you've taken during that time?
I had a client not pay me $266,000 and still hasn't to this day.
Wow, that's quite a big.
So that's a good one. Yeah, I've had I've had lots of small ones.
So with 266,000, so that would make quite a big impact on your financial standing.
Oh
right?
yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And so, how did you cover those losses?
Just keep going hard. Just bring money into the company from outside. We've done that a lot in the last 18 months. A lot of the time I know that it's short term when we bring money in, but we've definitely propped up the building company in the last 18 months. But it's because we know what's coming up in the future. Like we know that it's worth it. Just keep growing. If you're always growing, always doing more, let's say you grow here and you take a hit, but you're growing here, that extra growth will sort of cover that. So yeah, it's just keep expanding and growing. If you're always moving forward, yeah, and you've got speed, keep moving forward, you can sort of cover that.
Wow. So that would have been a good hit. So have you ever been sued before?
Nope.
Not yet.
No. But
That's
we've been through the legal route a few times with people who won't pay. That one's quite a unique situation. But we've had like we were basically taking one guy to adjudication that wouldn't pay us, and basically once he got sent the adjudication papers and finally stopped ignoring us and went to his lawyer would have told him, "You're fucked. Pay the bill." And you have to pay the legal bill and the adjudication fee.
Yeah.
So they ended up paying us, a few thousand in interest plus 12 grand for the adjudicator's bill plus like another 9 grand for our legal bill.
Yeah.
So we've had to go down that route a couple times. Which
is
I
that
guess
through doing like a proper payment claim, compliant payment claim?
Yep. That's it wasn't until that stage that I really learnt about how to do a proper payment claim, because most builders don't actually know how to do a proper one.
We just through Better Builder Club, shout out to the club. In the club, we just did a training a couple of days ago around payment claims and how to make sure they're compliant.
Yep.
And it's come through the CCA like 20 years ago. And most builders still, like, it's just normal now these days for builders to just go under. Like, oh yes, another builder that's gone under, another. But like 20 years ago, that wasn't the case. Builders didn't just go under all the time because after they bought that in, people started using payment claims, and now it's kind of gone by the wayside. Like most builders, if you tap them on the shoulder and ask them about if they do proper payment claims, they would not know what you're talking about.
Yep. So we generally don't unless we think something is starting to look a bit funny. So we still just send the normal invoices from Xero straight to them. But as soon as they start to go overdue or they start to have all of a sudden problems where there's not a problem, then we change our strategy and the payment process turns into actually physically going to see them with a witness, taking photos of it, signing it, going back home, scanning it, sending it to them via email, BCCing third parties into it, so you've covered both your bases. So that if it turns to shit and they go to their lawyer and they try to say, oh, it wasn't delivered properly, you've covered all your bases.
There's nothing like 260,000 in the negative that can make you learn really quickly, right?
It's an expensive lesson.
Yeah. Your payment claims are like perfect now these days, right?
But hey, it's a good lesson to learn in your 20s.
That definitely. I mean, definitely. And the fact that you bounced back from that is incredible in itself. So
that's just there's the risk and liability. Builders take on crazy amounts of risk and liability. I don't think most builders realize how much liability they're actually in for. So that's one reason that we're sort of pivoting towards trying to only do in-house projects. Because say with a spec home, and they're so much different with the clients, but say they're with a spec home, the client sees it, it's a finished house, they know the price, they go through and they see everything and they pay for it through the lawyers, through a sale and purchase agreement. They can't just go, oh, we're going to withhold 50k because they either can't pay you, won't pay you, or whatever the issue is. But so that's why we want to pivot towards more in-house projects. And the other side of it is, with client builds, you'll have, say, there's so much that the client can't visualize. Most people can't visualize what it's actually going to look like. So we see it all the time. Kitchens are a classic example. They'll go into the joinery, choose the kitchen, be happy as of it, and then the kitchen goes in and they're like, oh, the handles aren't what we expected. We want to change those, but we don't want to pay for it. Whereas with a spec home, they walk in, they see the kitchen, and it's always great. They go, this looks amazing. And you don't have the callbacks and all the admin time.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, it's kind of amazing that in the construction industry that is the case. It's probably the only industry where people can just decide, kind of now decided I've changed my mind and I don't want to pay you now.
It's not what I expected, even though it's what I signed off. Yep.
Yeah, 100%. So no, the risk, the reward is definitely a little bit out of whack, for sure. So that's why I got you into the investment side. I read that you've done 39 property deals so far.
Yeah, so there's a building company side. We've built houses, and those 39 property deals, that's essentially any title that I've brought and sold. So say about 14 of those would be spec homes. maybe 15. Then there's rental properties, commercial, boarding house, subdivisions, a couple of sections.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So have you read Rich Dad Poor Dad?
Yep, that was one of the books that my old lady gave me when I decided I was going to buy some houses. Yep.
That's like the gateway drug to passive income,
Yep.
real wealth building, right?
Yeah.
The purple book.
It's funny, it's kind of like an accounting economics book, but written not in a textbook style, and it sort of teaches you some of the basics and fundamentals of money, which makes people realise, because when you're growing up, nobody's taught about how money actually works. And once you start to learn, you realise that it's all bullshit. And, that book essentially outlines the groundworks for that.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, so talk to me then in terms of these property deals. So do you do all your deals? So like you said, about half of them or almost half of them are like, spec homes. You'll buy a site.
Yep.
Your construction company will build a house. And it's a speculative, right? So no one's bought it by the time you actually start building it. You haven't necessarily sold it yet.
Correct.
And so talk to me about how you set that up. So how do you pay for the land? How do you pay for the build? How do you get the funding? And then sort of do you stage it at the end, or how does it work?
Yeah, case by case scenario, market dependent, bank's policy at the time dependent, who you're dealing with, who you're in business with on the particular deal. Like I said to you earlier, there's 1,000 ways to skin a cat. But it started on the first spec home was like the most classic one, where it was just me and my brother put the same amount of money in. We put down a 50%, that was 50% at the time, on the section and 20% on the build. Progressive drawdowns with some valuations in the middle, built it, listed it, sold it at the end. So that's a JV, or one form of a JV, and that's kind of like a standard one, is using the bank, putting down the deposit, having the servicing to cover the interest payments along the way.
Yeah. And you have to cover all the interest payments along the way, because I know obviously some development funding you pay it all at the end.
You can capitalise the interest. Yeah, that's more say second tiers or asset lenders, even private lending.
Yep. Right. Yep. So through the bank, you have to you need to service it.
Yeah. We've actually like a lot of people think that I've done lots of interesting finance scenarios, but the reality is it's mostly been bank finance, investors' money, so private finance, and we've used non-bank a couple of times.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So it's not like crazy creative finance, vendor finance deals necessarily, or any of that sort of stuff?
We've structured some deals to make the finance work. Like we did this project in Rotorua last year where we signed it up in June. It was an existing house, we were converting it, and we didn't settle until the 20th of December. So we had early access to do all of the renovations. It was about a 650k reno, so that had to be paid in cash. So there was 3 of us in that. And that way we could do the renovations to finish the project, to get the valuation and the new code of compliance, to then get the finance to then settle the property. So that was a way to not pay for the property, but still do the project and make it work with the finance.
Right. So you get that, having early access or delayed settlement is always like a good little trick to kind of...
If you can make it work, yeah.
Yeah. So it all comes just down to the negotiation.
Yeah, how you structure the deal.
Yeah. So it goes both ways. So in this market, it's a bit of a tricky market. So things aren't just, you're not just going to like do a development poorly or a spec home poorly and then you're definitely going to sell it off because the market's hot. Yeah. So you're going to know what you're doing. But at the same time, there's also a lot more opportunities out there, right?
Yeah, if you got cash, yeah.
If you got cash. And there are a lot more ways to negotiate with vendors. Like you just said, you buy something, you delayed settlement where you come in early to do the reno or things like that.
Yep.
What are some of the... I'm not, you don't have to give away any of your secrets or anything like that. But what are some of the low-hanging fruit or some of the opportunities out there for builders that are looking for ways to, they may have a little bit of cash or a little bit of equity in their home and they're looking to, try to generate some income through either investment or flipping or development. What would you say? What are the opportunities out there?
Well, the thing is the opportunities, they're always changing with the market. So say for us at the moment, there is opportunity in the flips as opposed to, there's you could probably still make money in spec homes if you buy in the section for the right price. But at the moment, there's a big market for buying older houses. The first home buyers are still there. I think they're about 55% of the market at the current time. So there's an opportunity with flips. So we're concentrating on a few more of those, or looking to buy a few more of those at the moment. It's a pretty hard one for builders at the moment, to be honest. Like, there's not that many avenues for them to take. The market's contracted. People are tight, can't get the finance. There's obviously personal circumstances. Some people are in a specific position to be able to do things. That also comes back to, say, networking. You could just go and talk to all the people you know and say, hey, I'm looking to do a project. Do you know of anything? I actually had a guy message me the other day, and he wants to get in property, and I was just talking to him back and forth about where he's at and what he's doing. And then he just brought up the fact that his parents have all these residential sections ready to go. And I was like, why don't you just move a house on and flip it? And he was like, oh yeah, I suppose I could. So, like, his personal circumstances, he had that option there.
Yeah.
And he wouldn't have to pay for the section. So he's talking about getting into property investment when really there's something sitting right in front of him he can just make a move on and probably do quite well out of it.
Yeah, so it's kind of like sometimes you just got to look what's at your feet, right? And so have you done any sort of relocatables or anything like that?
Yep. Yeah, we've done 2 relocatables.
And what's that? Do you think that's still a good feasible
Great
option?
at the moment. Hard to get the finance. But if you're... Yeah, there's good money in that, say... And there's a few sections around that have distressed buyers or motivated sellers that may be willing to sell you a section cheaper, or you could buy a house on a larger section. There's still quite a few of them around where we are, and now that the market's not so hot, because when the market was hot, those properties were selling like crazy because everyone wanted to be a developer, and there's so much money in it at the time. Whether or not that's the case, I'm not too sure. A lot of people got burnt, but that's definitely an opportunity at the moment, and I've got a couple of friends doing that who are doing very well at the moment. So getting old houses, moving them on, getting a new consent, renovating them and on selling them, generally to first home buyers, sometimes investors.
Right. And do you think that it's harder in the big cities like Auckland to kind of come up with those opportunities? Do you think it's easier in the regions, or you think it's...
I think it's probably more competition in the cities, or it's already been intensified a lot more. So potentially more opportunities in the regions for that particular type of project.
Yeah,
the opportunities everywhere though. It's
yeah, for sure. So then the opportunities for something like that would be, so then obviously there's a hidden cost there in terms of the transportation, and then there's the risk the banks won't necessarily fund it while it's getting transported, or how does that work?
They'll just generally require larger deposits if you're doing that sort of project.
Because a lot of people see, they'll see like a beautiful old villa that needs a bit of renovating, and it's on, you say, oh, it's 120K or something. Yeah, mate, that's great. But then they don't think about the transportation costs and the services.
Yeah, there's lots of old ship boxes you can go and buy for 10K, and then it depends how far you're going to move it, 20, 30, 40K to move it. Get it on the site for 50 grand, but the actual house itself, if you were to say rebuild that from scratch to get to that stage, might cost you 150 to 200 grand. So that's where the value is in that particular type of project at the moment.
Yeah, so the value is in that first part, not the renovation part's always going to cost the same.
Yeah, it's going to cost what it costs.
Yeah, the first part is where the value sits. Okay, that's...
And that's, I suppose, there's a bit of opportunity in that market at the moment, because what we've recently went for in the past few years, where there are a lot of developers coming and buying those 1,000 square, 800 square sites and cutting them up, and then they're building townhouses or building new builds. And there's a lot of those houses that were picked up at that time, so the house moving companies were busy and they have them stored. So there's a lot of those houses sitting around cheap at the moment, or at least there has been.
Yeah. So if you can find a distressed party that owns a piece of land, you can cut some sort of deal there, either cheaper price or good terms.
Yeah, yep.
And you can find one of those houses and move them on there in a good area, then, you probably there could be those sort of opportunities out there at the moment.
Go for builder's terms, don't pay for the site until you move the house on and sell it. Yeah.
Any sort of other little tricks that people should know about
when doing that particular type of project? Be a builder so you know what you're looking at. I see a lot of, or some people, I get sent properties from, say, a few flippers or wholesalers, and they send it through and they go, hey, it's going to cost you 70 grand to renovate it. And then I spend 5 minutes looking at it. I'm like, this is 120K to renovate this. The margin's gone at $0. So I guess having the knowledge or having the expertise helps a lot.
Yeah.
So maybe if you're not a builder, you can jump in with a builder and have a bit more of an idea.
Yeah. That's probably good. Okay. So 39 deals. You are 32 years old. That's pretty good. What's the goal then for you moving forward? Like, what's the end game?
What's the end game? Well, the end game is essentially freedom. It's being able to do what you want to do when you want to do it, and not have to ask anyone for permission to be able to do it, and to be able to get to that point and then decide what you want to do with your time and resources. So once you get to that stage, you can decide, well, you want to be able to help people. At least I do, the old hand up, not a handout. So you get to that point, you have your freedom, but let's say for me, because this is kind of where I'm in this stage where I've put together deals and people have helped me with them because they're getting a piece of the pie as well. So it's in their best interest to a degree. So if I can get to that stage and do the same thing where you help other people, because you don't necessarily care so much about the money anymore, you care about the time. But to the person who's getting started, they're all about the money, the people who are early on in life. So the people who have the time and the money, or people who have the money, they want the time, so they don't want to spend all their time doing the groundwork. A lot of them will be happy to finance the people, the younger guys who are motivated and ambitious.
Yeah.
So that's sort of the goal. Get to the point where I can decide what you want to do. Set up your kids, all that sort of thing. Give them the same opportunities. Yep.
Yeah.
Help everyone around you. Prove. Guess I really wanted to prove to myself that I wasn't useless. Yeah.
So what drives you, do you think? Because a lot of people are driven, sometimes if you're being driven by something, a negative emotion or something like that, is more powerful, right?
Yep.
400% more powerful, they say, a negative than positive. So what drives you?
Yeah, you're 100% right. Most people are driven or hooked by fear as opposed to the push is a lot stronger than the pull for a lot of people. I think I've definitely got a pretty strong aspect or push aspect. I don't want to say I want to I maybe got a chip on my shoulder where I want to prove to everyone around me that I am capable of doing something. Kind of want to prove to, say, my family that I'm not actually a useless piece of shit like I maybe was a little bit in the past.
And where does that come from? Does that come from you not wanting to do farming?
Nah, just everyone makes mistakes in their past and wants to grow from that and prove that you're not actually that person that some people might have thought you were.
Right.
There's definitely that side to it.
You're a little shit when you're like teenage years.
Yeah, post-teenage years.
Yeah. That's very interesting, eh? I mean, who isn't a little shit when they're like young?
Correct. Yeah. Some people push the boat out a bit further than others, though, eh?
Yeah, but I mean, it's just because you're young and dumb, you know what I mean? And some people are just like, some people are lucky enough to get stopped early enough, and some people don't get stopped.
Yep.
And they go a little bit further.
Yeah. I've probably got the pull aspect as well. I've always known that I didn't want to be poor. Yeah, which is the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah, most people go, oh, that's egotistical or whatever, but everyone else is the same. Most people will see someone who says they don't want to be poor, they want to do well in life, and they'll say, oh, what an asshole. But really, they're just looking at them through their own lens. Yeah. So
we all want the same stuff.
Yeah. Yep.
We all want to provide for our children, and we all want to be free and have financial freedom. We all want to do what we want to do when we want to do it. We're all the same. Do you think that because you put a lot of content out now, doing property education stuff, you've done 39 deals. I think that's enough deals for you to be able to give back, provide other people the opportunity to learn from your mistakes and from your successes. I'm interested to see what sort of comments you get. Like, is tall poppy syndrome still a thing in New Zealand?
100%. Yeah, you should see the comments from. I actually it's quite funny because we started doing a bit of content maybe 6-7 weeks ago, a lot around the property education side, and we'll post it through to Instagram, goes through to Facebook, and so on Instagram it's like 95% positive feedback, and on Facebook it's like 95% negative feedback. And I delete most of the comments on Facebook because I don't really have time. I'm not going to reply to most of the comments on there. Like the comments are like, "You are the reason my kids can't afford a house," or "People like you shouldn't be allowed to hoard houses. You're the one causing the housing problem." And I'm like, if you actually just did a little bit of research, you'd realise we're adding far more houses to the market than we own. In fact, a lot of our rentals are new builds that we built ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
And a lot. Who are these people? Are there a lot of boomers, or is it like our age?
yeah. There are a lot of boomers. Yep.
Yeah.
So the tall property is definitely very, very prevalent. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it doesn't really matter. Like I know that they're looking at a mirror, and the way they see it is the way that they've sort of experienced, or that's the mindset they've built. So they've built a negative mindset. Like they haven't, whereas people who are like, "That's so cool, I want to learn how to do that," and the people that message you, they've got the mindset where that's actually possible, and because they're motivated and happy by the fact that you've done it and they want to learn, that shows that they're the kind of person who's actually going to be able to go and do that thing themselves.
100%, yeah. So what success leaves clues, right? And so we're talking about that now. Like what are some sort of habits or thinking or approaches that you've sort of implemented into your life that sort of been beneficial towards your success?
Yeah, I definitely go through stages of having really good habits. I think if I could think of a moment where I really started to kick my shit into gear, was 2019, and I went to Tony Robbins' event, which is pretty cool, and I got a lot of value back then. And then I like, as soon as the event was finished, I was like, sweet, quit alcohol, quit drinking coffee. Like 8 o'clock's my bedtime. I'm going to read for 30 minutes. I had this full structure of a day set out, and I did that for like 3 or 4 months. So it was 4:45, wake up, 4:50, out of bed, hydrate, put on the gym clothes, go into the kitchen, have multivitamins, into the gym at 10 past 5, gym for 35 minutes, come out, read my goals that were on the wall in the hallway, and I had all my goals structured into, financial and relationships and all that. Read the goals, think about them, go and meditate for 5 minutes, come back, think about all the things I need to do at work for the day, and then go and have a shower, get ready, dress for the day, for what you're going to do and who you're going to see, and then have breakfast and be in the office just after 6:30. And I did that for months, and it was pretty crazy. But things actually really started to kick off when I did that. And you sort of know, because you go through those stages, and you do that for 4 months, and then the next 4 months seem to be going really well because of the groundwork that you had set in the process getting into that point. And then you go through stages where you sort of, not lapse is the right word. I think I don't have a problem with anyone drinking alcohol. I drink, reasonably often, but you notice when you go for a period of say 2 months where you're drinking quite often and not doing the work that you should be doing, that time might be fine, but then the next couple of months it sort of catches up to you and you realize that things aren't going as well as they should be.
Yeah.
That's I've sort of gone through stages of, being real, I guess, how do you call it, kind of like in the military, where you're like, this is what I'm doing, this is my structure, this is my system, and then you sort of slowly fade out of it, and then you realize things aren't going good again. You got to kick back into a system and a timeline. And
yeah, it's so true. Have you read that book Atomic Habits?
Yeah, great book by James Clear. I read a really good one recently that's, I forget what the book was called, but it's the same principles, but it was really easy to read. It's an Australian doctor. I'm trying to remember it now.
Yeah, and it just kind of shows you the importance of habits and how you could create good habits as well as bad habits. Definitely a good. It's almost like I thought that Atomic Habits was like a good one to almost like an annual read. Like a good January read. On the beach or something, just to kind of get your mind right into it as well. Yeah, that's very cool. And have you ever sort of, things don't always go to plan. Sometimes you lose, $266,000.
Yeah, exactly.
Have you ever sort of struggled for moments to kind of with mental health and keeping it together and gone through dark times, and if so, how have you sort of handled it?
Look, everybody goes through. Everybody has periods where they're going through a hard time. I don't think I've ever really struggled with any mental health aspect. I know a lot of people I know that's quite a big thing with a lot of people, and I think when you develop a mental model around, say, like positivity and having certain quotes that you can reflect back to, that helps a lot to steer you away from all of the negativity that's around. But so I can't say that I've really dealt with, say, a mental illness myself. I sometimes think that a lot of people I kind of think that's necessary to go through the hard times to develop into the person who's able to deal with the hard shit, so you don't end up becoming a person who deals with mental illness. Because really, what is mental illness? Not mental illness, but people who say they're depressed, really that's your body or mind telling you that something needs to change, and you're the only one who can go and change it for you. You're the only person who can go and turn your life around, make things better for yourself, because nobody else is going to do it for you. You know, your mum's not going to come and drag you by the foot out of bed and swing the hammer for you at work.
Yeah. I'm kind of like, you kind of say that, and then immediately I'm like, some people are not going to like this. But then at the same time, I'm also like, appreciate it, because you need both sides of the coin.
Yeah,
because
people don't like it when you, like, I definitely had a fair share of people say I'm depressed, and I kind of, maybe it's because I haven't been in that mental state that I can't really resonate it with it. But then I also know when people who are depressed tell me about the thing they're depressed about, everybody does this because you know, you look through a mirror, not a window. So you think about the thing that they're complaining about. So someone says to you they're depressed, they tell you why, and then you think about examples in your own mind or experiences you've had where you thought you compare their depression and their scenario to things you've gone through. And if in your mind you can think of scenarios that you've been through that are 10 times worse than the thing that's making them depressed, you kind of maybe not lose empathy, but you kind of struggle to think of it as being something that can make you depressed. So you go, oh, maybe you just need to change something. Yeah. And I know that's probably a really unpopular opinion, but...
Yeah. No, I know what you mean. I mean, it definitely, I think it's all case by case, right? And some people, you know, you have an old lady and her flowers are withering away because she hasn't been outside watering them, like that might stress her out. And then you have a guy that's got $2 billion of debt, and that's stressing him out. And and you could argue that it's person to person. That could be but what I would say is that I think that there's been a big shift of, you know, there's all this mental health porn, so to speak, where it's just people can just sort of
like reinforcing that
it's like a soup
thing.
of we can all just sort of sit in the soup of our mental health and constantly just sit in it and not take accountability to.
Well, the more we talk about it, I agree that some people going through challenging situations and people need help occasionally, maybe not all the time, like that's a thing. But the more that people encourage it and talk about it, how it's super acceptable for everyone, like to be allowed to be depressed, the more you're reinforcing that behaviour. If that makes sense.
The worse it gets.
Yeah, the worse it can get. Yeah.
And that, I mean, there's definitely research behind that now as well, in terms of constantly, especially with adolescent people, constantly talking about it makes it worse.
Yep.
But yeah, it's definitely something that I think it's very important for people to talk about it, but not to. You don't need to necessarily overdo it. And I mean, we're not psychologists or anything like that. But I think it's important to have that balance, I think, when you're looking at that that aspect. Cool, man. We've got we've been over an hour and 10 minutes. So
that's all good.
When you're having fun, you know, time flies.
Yeah. It takes as long as it takes.
So it's been awesome to having you on. So let's run through some rapid fire questions, if you wouldn't mind.
Yep, sweet. Go for it.
And then I'll let you go back to the beautiful Waikato.
Yeah.
So how big is your team currently? Remind me.
9 guys, or 9 in the team.
Cool. What's your crew mix?
So there's 3, about to be 4 qualified. So 3 apprentices, 3 qualified.
Cool.
Sales and marketing lady, admin lady, and myself.
Okay, perfect. How many projects did you guys complete last year?
Oh, how big's the project? Little to big projects. We only built a few new builds. We only built 3 or 4 houses. We've done a ton of little jobs for people, and we've done a little bit of contracting work for other people as well.
Cool.
Yep.
What was your turnover last year? Under 1 mil, 1 to 3, 3 to 5, 5 to 7.
The building company was about 3.6. Yep.
Cool. Awesome. What's the lowest gross profit margin building companies should be aiming for?
The lowest gross margin for 10% would be a pretty healthy business. But yeah, I'd say 10% would be a good minimum.
Yeah. Free quote or paid quote?
Free quote. We do free quotes, yeah.
QS or price yourself?
Price myself.
Project management software or spreadsheets?
We use project management softwares, but sometimes I wonder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not always perfect, right?
Nah.
Fixed price contract or charge up?
Charge up.
How many property deals did you complete last year?
Not that many last year. 4, 5.
Texting or talking on the phone?
Texting.
EV or petrol head?
Petrol head.
Would you rather have a beer with an architect, a subby, or council member?
Subby.
Jock or hippie?
Jock.
Wine or whiskey?
Both. Anything.
Makita, DeWalt, or Milwaukee?
It's good. It's got to be Makita, isn't it?
Well, I don't know. Let's lock it in. These days, apprentices are A, soft, B, open-minded, or C, hard workers.
All 3.
Yeah. Are you too mean or too nice to your staff?
Far too nice.
What's your most used emoji?
This emoji.
Oh, the Italian
yeah,
kind of. Yeah.
Because it's quite ambiguous. You don't quite know what it means.
Yeah.
Is that cool, or are they pissed off? Or
Yeah, exactly. Are you an extrovert or introvert?
Oh, I'd probably say mostly extroverted.
What's your favorite business or non-business book?
I read started this year Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill, and that is amazing. That is so cool. Talks about, I just really resonated with a lot of things they said. He talks about living from your other self, so doing the thing that you think is really scary and high risk, and then turns out it actually works out a lot of the time. So that was cool. Good business book that I read recently is Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell. That was quite good.
Cool.
Yeah.
What's the best property educator out there at the moment?
Just standard buy and hold investment. Michael Wilson.
Yeah, there we go. I love it. All the tall poppies just started coming out.
Yeah, they're like, no, he's not.
What's one item you can't live without?
A cell phone.
Yeah, that's it for everyone, really, isn't it? Did you have fun?
Yeah, it's good.
Awesome, man.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, appreciate it.
And we had a good chat. Like I said, we just been over time, so it means we had a good yarn. And yeah, I think there's different ways for people to different ways to skin the cat.
Yep.
And like 100%. You say, and there's different ways for people to generate income. So yeah, thanks for coming on. I think some people would have got a lot out of that. So,
awesome. A lot of fun.
Awesome. Cheers, man.